They called me a failure so many times the words stopped hurting, it just turned into fuel. I was too serious, too cold, too ambitious, the daughter who didn't send money for my sister's third DUI bail, the ghost who skipped Christmas, the embarrassment Mom rewrote out of family group chats. And yet, that morning, I buttoned a simple navy jacket, left my security detail at the corner, and walked into a crowded municipal courtroom, like a shadow, unannounced, uninvited, unseen. I didn't come as Governor Dana Walsh. I came as the daughter they threw away. The air was stale. Old wood, old stories. My mother sat in the front row, pearls tight at her throat, whispering, "It'll be fine, baby," to my sister like she could wish consequences away. My sister Clara wore a repentant cream blouse, hair tucked behind her ears, hands folded just so. She had perfected contrition. The room hummed with polite boredom until the bailiff barked, "All rise." The judge strode in, iron gray hair, iron gray eyes, the kind of man who spoke like a gavel. I took the last seat in the back. No one looked at me. Perfect. He scanned the file, lips pressed thin, and began the script I knew too well. Prior offenses, breathalyzer refusals, rehab no-shows. Mom's mouth tightened. Clara dabbed at a dry eye. I watched the judge glance across the room, tracking the defendant's family. His gaze kept moving left, right, then snagged. On me. Something flickered behind the glasses. He leaned closer to the bench mic, squinting like he'd seen a ghost. His voice dropped, but the microphones made it carry anyway. "Wait, Governor Walsh?" Silence detonated. The clerk froze mid-keystroke. A lawyer choked on his cough. The bailiff's hand paused near his holster out of sheer habit. And my mother, all color drained from her face, like the pearl necklace had strangled a secret free. Clara didn't turn at first. She kept the performance going. Then she risked it, half glance, then full pivot, eyes widening, mouth parting. I didn't stand. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I gave the judge one small nod that said, "I'm here, and I'm staying." He straightened, the tone of the room tilted with him. "This court will take a brief recess," he said, too quickly. He meant, "We need to rethink everything." Governors don't attend misdemeanor hearings. Not alone. Not quietly. Not unless there's a reason the docket can't show. The bench door clicked. The buzz started, whispers like wasps, reporters texting, a defense attorney suddenly discovering an urgent filing. Mom finally found her voice. "Clara," she hissed, knuckles bone white around her purse strap. "You didn't tell me she was coming." Clara didn't answer. She stared at me the way a child stares at the ocean for the first time, mockery gone, awe creeping in where entitlement used to live. I kept breathing like an anchor. I didn't come to save her. I didn't come to ruin her. I came to witness. To let the one truth they could never spin fill the room. The failure they discarded was the most powerful person present, and no one had prepared a script for that. The judge reappeared 10 minutes later with a new posture and a new plan. "Back on the record," he said, voice careful now, words chosen like stepping stones across a flood. "In light of developments, the court is considering reassignment for potential conflict." My sister's attorney half rose. "Your Honor." "No," the judge snapped gently, eyes cutting to me, then away. "Not here, not today." Mom finally turned to face me. Her lips formed my name but made no sound, as if saying it out loud might shatter the story she'd spent years telling everyone else. I sat up, squared my shoulders, and met her gaze. For the first time in our lives, she looked away first. "Counsel," the judge said. "Approach." The room emptied of certainty. And that was when the courtroom doors creaked open and the cameras found us. The whispers grew into a storm. I could feel the vibration of phones lighting up, reporters, aides, even rival offices. "Governor spotted at local courthouse." I knew exactly how the headlines would sound before they were written, but I stayed seated, calm, unreadable. That was the thing about power, it didn't need noise. The judge called a recess again. As people shuffled out, I could feel my mother's stare burning a hole into me. Finally, she couldn't help herself. "Dana," she hissed, just above a whisper. "Why are you here? To embarrass us?" I turned my head slowly, meeting her eyes. "No," I said softly. "I came to watch." Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have a response ready for a daughter who didn't beg, who didn't defend, who didn't apologize for existing. During the break, the judge approached me quietly. "Governor Walsh," he said, lowering his voice. "If I had known." I stopped him with a small motion of my hand. "You didn't need to know," I said. "I'm here as a private citizen." He nodded once, understanding. But the power dynamic in that room had already shifted like gravity. He wasn't presiding over a petty case anymore. He was standing inside a political earthquake. When we reconvened, everyone was stiff, cautious. My sister's attorney stumbled through his opening, his voice cracking once or twice. Clara's hands trembled as she folded them neatly on the table. Mom's composure had vanished, her usual mask of superiority replaced with tight-lipped panic. The judge's tone changed too. Gone was the weary irritation of routine cases. Every sentence now weighed more. Given the defendant's history of repeat offenses, he began, and the gravity of endangerment involved. Clara's lawyer cut in. Your Honor, if I may. The judge's gavel came down hard. You may not. And then his eyes flicked briefly toward me. Not in fear, respect, recognition. Mom noticed. Her hand slipped off her purse and landed on Clara's arm. She whispered something, desperate, maybe a prayer, maybe just fix this. But you can't fix what you've spent a lifetime breaking. I leaned back slightly, watching. I remembered every Christmas I'd been absent from their photos, every graduation ignored, every phone call that started with, "You should be more like your sister. Clara, the golden child, the good one." I had learned long ago that their love was conditional on my usefulness. When I stopped being useful, I stopped existing. Until now. The courtroom suddenly didn't feel like theirs anymore. It felt like mine. Clara turned, finally meeting my eyes, searching for something: mercy, nostalgia, an old bond. I offered none, just quiet acknowledgement, like two people standing on opposite sides of a cliff. Governor Walsh, the judge said suddenly, addressing me directly now. The entire room turned. Would you like to make a statement, for the record? Every heartbeat in that courtroom seemed to pause. I took a breath, the kind that tastes like victory and restraint. No, Your Honor, I said evenly. I'm only here to observe. That single line landed like a verdict. Because sometimes silence doesn't mean surrender, it means control. The judge nodded, understood. He turned back to the case, but no one was listening anymore. All eyes stayed on me, the sister they'd dismissed, the daughter they'd erased, the woman who'd built an empire out of their underestimation. And as the gavel struck again, I saw what real power looked like: not shouting, not revenge. Just being impossible to ignore. When the session finally ended, the sound of the gavel still echoed like thunder. People rushed out, murmuring, pretending not to stare. I stood up slowly, smoothing the crease of my jacket. Mom and Clara didn't move. They just sat there, like statues cracked at the seams. I walked past them without a word. My heels against the marble floor sounded louder than any speech I could have given. The reporters outside turned like a wave, cameras flashing, questions slicing through the air. Governor Walsh, are you involved in this case? Is the defendant your sister? Are you influencing the outcome? I stopped at the courthouse steps, sunlight spilling across the pavement. I looked directly at one of the cameras and said, calm and clear, I'm attending as a private citizen, no further comment. Then I walked through the noise like it didn't exist. Inside the car, my phone vibrated nonstop. Mom, 4 missed calls. Clara, 9. Unknown numbers, 12. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I stared out the window at the reflection of the Capitol dome in the glass. The city moved around me, oblivious. Power hummed in the distance, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that rewrites the room without speaking. Back at the office, my assistant looked nervous. Governor, the press is calling nonstop. They want a statement about the trial. Tell them I was supporting a member of the community, I said, taking off my jacket. That's all they need to know. She nodded, half stunned, half awed. That night, I went home to silence. My apartment, minimalist, spotless, quiet, felt like the opposite of the chaos I'd just walked out of. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window overlooking the city. Then, my phone buzzed again. A text from Clara. You could have helped me. You could have warned me. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I typed slowly. You had their protection. I had their silence. You learned entitlement. I learned endurance. We both had teachers. Delivered. Read. No reply. The next morning my face was everywhere. News anchors dissected my expression. Headlines read, Governor Walsh attends sister's trial, a silent statement of power? From failure to force, the governor who stole the room. They didn't know the real story. They didn't need to. The photo alone said enough. Me, standing calm in that courtroom, while my mother and sister froze in disbelief. For years, they had written me out of the family story. Now I was the headline. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again, unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Dana. My mother's voice was brittle, trembling. I didn't know you'd be there. I know. You blindsided us. The reporters are everywhere. Do you have any idea what you've done to your sister's reputation? I laughed quietly. Her reputation? You mean the one you built by tearing mine apart? She sighed shakily. She's your sister. She needs your help. They might revoke her license. She could go to jail. I looked out the window at the golden skyline. And you want me to save her? You're powerful now, she said, voice quivering between guilt and manipulation. You can fix this. I took a deep breath, letting her words hang in the air. Then I said softly, you called me a failure for years. Now that I succeeded without you, you want me to erase her consequences? No, Mom. She's your golden girl. Let her shine through this too. And I hung up. No shouting, no revenge speech, just truth sharp and simple. For years, they'd begged me to be smaller. Now, my silence was louder than all of them combined. A week later, the official ruling came down. Clara's license revoked. Her probation extended. Her fines impossible. The story hit every local station, then the national ones. Governor's sister sentenced in DUI case. The public didn't know every detail, but they didn't need to. The contrast spoke for itself. One sister cleaning up the state, the other drowning in her own mess. By then, my family had gone silent. No calls, no messages, just absence, and somehow, it felt like peace. Until Aunt Lydia called. She'd always been the family's self-appointed diplomat, the one who believed everything could be solved with polite conversation. Dana, sweetheart, she began, her voice sweet and heavy. Your mother is devastated. Your sister's humiliated. Isn't that enough? I let the question breathe before answering. Enough for who? She hesitated. They've learned their lesson. You don't have to keep punishing them. I'm not, I said calmly. The law is. A long silence followed. I could hear her exhale, then whisper, You're colder than I remember. I smiled faintly. No, Aunt Lydia. I'm finally warm because I stopped standing in their shadow. That night, I worked late at the Capitol. Stacks of policy drafts surrounded me. Education reform, mental health funding, foster care improvements, things that actually mattered. My chief of staff glanced up from her laptop. Governor, are you okay? She asked. I looked at her and nodded. I'm more than okay. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting to be seen. I was leading. The same people who once whispered I'd never make it past city council now said my name with caution, not gossip, not pity, but respect. That weekend, I attended a leadership summit in D.C. Senators, federal judges, even foreign diplomats gathered in one grand room, marble and light everywhere. When I stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet not because they feared me, but because they listened. I spoke without notes, about accountability, about power without empathy being hollow, about how privilege without responsibility destroys families, nations, and lives. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The truth hummed under every word. When I stepped down, people rose to their feet. Applause thundered, bright and brief. But applause wasn't what I'd come for. I'd spent years chasing it, begging for it from the wrong people. Now I just let it wash over me and fade. As I made my way through the crowd, shaking hands, posing for photos, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Governor Walsh. I turned. It was Judge Levinson, the man from Clara's trial. May I say, he began softly, what you did that day, not saying a word. It taught us all something. I smiled. Silence is a language, I said. You just have to decide who deserves to understand it. He chuckled, nodded once, and walked away. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The power they mocked me for chasing wasn't about control. It was about peace. But peace, I'd soon learn, doesn't mean the past is done knocking. The next evening, as the sun sank behind the Capitol, I was wrapping up paperwork when my assistant entered. Governor, there's someone downstairs, she said carefully. Says it's personal. I already knew who it was. Outside, the air was gold, the light fading slow over the marble steps, and there she stood, Clara. No makeup, no expensive clothes, just a plain gray sweater and tired eyes. For once, no performance. She stepped forward, clutching a manila envelope. I'm not here to beg, she said, voice low but steady. I just wanted to say thank you. I tilted my head slightly. For what? For not ruining me, she whispered. You could have. Everyone said you would, but you didn't. I stared at her for a long moment. You were already doing that. I said quietly. She swallowed hard, nodding. I know. I'm getting help. I'm trying. The wind lifted her hair, soft and broken. I didn't reach out. I didn't comfort her, but I didn't turn away either. Then don't try for me, I said finally. Try for the person you become when no one's watching. That's the one who'll matter. Her eyes filled, but she smiled faintly and handed me the envelope. Old photos, she said, before it all got complicated. Then she turned and walked off down the steps. No drama, no begging. Just quiet distance. I stood there, the envelope in my hand, feeling its weight heavier than paper, lighter than hate. Back home, I set it on the counter, didn't open it right away. I made tea, watched the city glow, and listened to the silence I'd built from the ashes of years of noise. When I finally opened it, I found snapshots of who we used to be, 2 little girls running through sprinklers, laughing until we couldn't breathe. A photo of me at a science fair, holding a blue ribbon, alone but smiling. That one I framed, placed it next to my inauguration photo, 2 versions of me, side by side, one invisible, one undeniable. The next morning my phone rang, Mom. I watched it until it stopped. Then I blocked the number, not out of anger, but peace. Because healing isn't about revenge, it's about control, about deciding who still gets access to your peace. Clara's redemption wasn't mine to shape. My silence wasn't punishment, it was closure. The daughter they called dramatic wrote laws that protected children. The woman they dismissed as cold rebuilt homes for families. The failure they erased became the name whispered in rooms they could never enter. They once told me I didn't deserve a seat at the table. So I built the building. And when I look out at that city every night, its lights, its noise, its endless movement, I remember the girl no one clapped for. She didn't need applause. She needed purpose. And she found it.